All right, cool. I will get us started. So welcome. As I just mentioned, some of you I know pretty well and some of you are new faces. That's great. I also think we're going to be joined by a few other people, hopefully in the next few minutes here, who said that they were going to make it. If you don't know me, I am Professor Rebecca Gill at Wake Forest. I'm in the Communication and Entrepreneurship departments. And I'm the faculty director for Wake West. And Wake West is a new program at Wake where we had, not have, but we had students doing internships out in Silicon Valley. And of course, with our very interesting semester, they all had to leave California, some of them working remotely from home, some of them just not doing the internships anymore and focusing on classes. When I was starting to get ready for Wake West and thinking with Cynthia Mull here, who is our program coordinator, as well as Andy Chan in the OPCD, we're thinking about site visits and entrepreneurs who we really wanted students to meet while they were out there. And some of you might know Justin Catanoso. He's a professor in journalism. And he had a really interesting and great conversation with Diego Saez-Gil, who you are going to hear from today. Diego runs Pachama, which is Andean for Earth Mother. Is that right, Diego?
Correct.
Nice. He and I had a conversation way back in February, and I just was really inspired by what he's trying to do with Pachama and his vision for technology and environmentalism. So I was really bummed out when we had to leave California and students weren't going to be able to meet him face to face. But I'm also really excited that we get to have a conversation with him now. So I'm going to ask really quickly if for the people who are on Zoom right now, if you have the ability to turn on your camera and you don't mind turning on your camera, if you would do it really quickly just to wave. So I always think it's nice to start a Zoom call with as many faces as we have. So awesome, let's just see the faces. And then of course, thank you. Of course, if you don't want to be on camera the whole time, you don't have to be. So feel free to turn off your camera. Hi, Rebecca Beyer. Feel free to turn off your camera whenever you're comfortable. And of course, I also know it helps bandwidth issues if your video is off. So you don't have to stay on the whole time. I just like to see people at least at the beginning, and I'll ask to see you again at the end as well, if you don't mind. So I'm going to turn it over to Diego in just a moment, but I'd like to first just tell you a little bit about how I'm thinking of our time together. I've got a few questions that I've prepared to ask Diego as a way to just get us started and get us thinking about what he's doing and what his background is and how he came to where he is. But there's certainly opportunity for conversation and questions. So feel free to raise your hand at any point. Feel free to add a question in the chat box. And we'll also open it up at the end of our time together today. We'll open it up just more openly to question and answer. But whenever you want, I think also jump in. I have a feeling that both Diego and I feel pretty open-ended about the conversation we're about to have. So with that said, Diego, I'm going to kind of get us started by asking you if you could tell us a little bit about your background, introduce us to you, and how you came to found the company Pachama.
For sure, and thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to get to speak with you guys. My name is Diego Saez-Gil. I was born and grew up in Argentina, in the north of Argentina, in the province of Tucumán. An area that is surrounded by beautiful forest, is the last tip of the Amazon rainforest type of ecosystems. It's a forest called the Yunga, and I grew up in a very small town. And I always had this fantasy or this dream of traveling the world and seeing what was out there. Argentina is very far away from everything, as you guys know. And I always had this sort of entrepreneurial energy, the desire to start some projects, to do something on my own, and to hopefully make a contribution. Since I was a kid, I also had a big connection with nature and a sense of environmentalism. Um, and in Argentina, I studied business and electromechanics, and then I applied to do a scholarship. I applied to a scholarship to do my master's abroad. I got a scholarship to go to study in Barcelona, and that's how I left Argentina about 12 years ago, right after college. And I arrived to Barcelona. It was very difficult at the beginning to be, an immigrant in a new country, but that was an experience that also gave me a lot of self-confidence that I could be on my own and survive. That I think informed me afterwards as an entrepreneur. In Barcelona, I worked for a consulting firm, but I really was, waiting to find my opportunity to start my own project. Then came to the US to do an internship in New York City, and the internship really didn't work out. This is relevant to these times for you guys, because I arrived to the US in 2009. It was the middle of the financial crisis. New York City was not a good place to be. All companies were laying off people. It was a rough economic moment, and the internship didn't work out. And I found myself in the US. I did have a visa to stay for some time. I was broke. I didn't have any connections. The economy was crashing, and my English was not very good at the time. And yet, crazy enough, I decided to start a startup. Because, I think I sometimes also knowing that you have nothing to lose is kind of good, because, the alternative is just, go back home and figure something out. But I didn't have anything to lose. So I started my first startup. The first startup was actually an app to book hostels. When I was in Europe, I was traveling as a backpacker, staying in hostels, in students' hostels. And at the time, there were no apps to book one, So I partnered with a friend of mine who was a developer, and we hacked together an app that you could, book hostels with. And then we started connecting hostels in different places, and then, promoting this app on the App Store. After some time, I tried to raise some capital. I had no idea how to raise investments, so I just, was rejected by a lot of investors. Eventually, I figured out, and we were able to raise some investment money, and then, we started growing this app. 2 years later, we received an acquisition offer. There was this company in Boston called Student Universe that sells discounted flights for students. And they wanted to get into mobile, they wanted to get into accommodation, so they made an offer to buy our company. We couldn't believe it. It was, kind of like a really great opportunity for us to, finally, make some money and pay our student debts and get our foothold in the US. So we sold the company. I became a VP of mobile for this company, and I helped them launch other mobile apps for bookings of flights, for bookings of tours and things like that. And after that, I went to Argentina to visit my family, and the airline lost my suitcase. And that led me to a second startup idea. And I was like, how come there's not a way to track your suitcase? So this time I partnered with another friend who had some experience on manufacturing products in China. And we said, well, how about we try to build a suitcase that you could track with GPS and 3G? And we started building a prototype. We decided to launch a crowdfunding campaign. And we launched this crowdfunding campaign that we did a very funny video that went viral on YouTube. You still can find it on YouTube. The company was called Blue Smart. And we raised $2.5 million on pre-orders, which was quite surprising for us. And then with that company, I ended up moving to California because we came here to find investment. We were we got selected to be part of this accelerator called Y Combinator that helps you a lot get started. And then decided to move to China because in China is where we needed to manufacture these products. So moved to Hong Kong, and then we'll go to the factories every week. And finally, after a year of really, really hard work, lots of uncertainty, we started shipping the products, and then two things happened that were interesting and unexpected. Number one thing that happened is that I started feeling, damn, I'm here building this company in China. These factories are polluting the environment a lot. I could see it, I could see the pollution in places like Beijing and Shanghai and Shenzhen. And these products, I'm trying to sell these products that are gonna end up in garbage bins. I all of a sudden I realized that, with this entrepreneurial energy, trying to solve my own problems and to do cool stuff, now I was part of the very system that was destroying the planet, So I had sort of like a crisis of purpose in a moment. It was is this what I really want to be putting all my energy on? So we raised a new round of funding from a Chinese fund, and I decided to step out of the company, and my partner took over as the CEO of the company. And I took a sabbatical time to really think what I wanted to do, and came to realize that I wanted to do something about the crisis that we're facing, which is climate change, and the way that we're treating our planet. And I came to realize that everything I had been learning during all these years about how to start companies, how to build technology, how to build teams, could be put at the service of starting a company that could be part of the solution to the crises that we are facing and we will face on this century. And that's how I came to start Pachama. Pachama is a technology company that uses the latest technologies on satellite and artificial intelligence to help validate the efforts that people are doing on the field to restore forest and protect forest, which is one of the most important solutions to climate change. And then to connect the companies that are looking to take action on climate change by offsetting their carbon emissions with these projects that are doing forest conservation and restoration. Happy to tell you more about the company and go into the specifics, but that's the summary of my story. In the middle, lots of struggle, lots of hard work, lots of uncertainty, lots of risk taking, but at the same time, a lot of wonderful experiences that made me grow, made me make it all the way from a small town in Argentina to here, the heart of Silicon Valley, where now we are creating a company that can have a very meaningful impact in the world. So lots of directions that we can go from there.
Yeah, as you know, I've got a bunch of questions that are gonna kind of mine some of that experience that you just mentioned. For the less environmentally or technically inclined of us in this conversation, meaning me, can you break down more of what Pachama does? So I understand forests are important. I understand a little bit about carbon sequestration and carbon markets and things like that. But can you tell us a little bit more of the context there? And what's the day-to-day that you do as a company?
Yes. So there is an increasing pressure on corporations to take responsibility for their impact on the environment. That means that many companies are starting to measure what is their CO2 emissions and then try to reduce those emissions by switching to renewable energies and things like that. And then they are moving on to compensating these emissions by removing CO2 from the atmosphere. And there is a framework, a mechanism that was created by the United Nations called carbon credits. Carbon credits are then given to projects that either remove carbon from the atmosphere or reduce emissions. So the intention is that, okay, on one hand, you have the polluters, the companies are putting CO2 in the atmosphere. These companies should be paying for the projects that are going to compensate that by removing carbon from the atmosphere. Now, one type of project that can receive carbon credits is reforestation or forest conservation, right? So if you're planting trees that will capture CO2, you can get credits. And if you are protecting an endangered forest that is under pressure for deforestation, you can receive carbon credits. Now, until today, that obtaining carbon credits is very difficult. It's a very bureaucratic, expensive, and slow process because it entails sending auditors to the field to literally count trees and measure the trees with tapes and lots of paperwork. So as a result of that, it's not a really good value proposition for most landowners, farmers, and indigenous communities, and a lot of people who could be benefiting of this. There's this big barrier of entry into this market. In the other side, you have corporations such as Microsoft and Google and Delta Airlines who are very eager to compensate their carbon emissions. But for them, it's also very confusing. And you know, you might have seen, guys, sometimes when you book a flight, you know, it says, "Well, compensate your CO2 emissions." You kind of have to trust that someone else is doing something in the other side, not a lot of visibility. So what we're building is a platform in which we validate the work of these forest projects by using satellite images in which we can observe the forest. And we don't observe it with human eyes, we observe it with computer eyes, right? We use artificial intelligence algorithms, the same type of algorithms that Facebook uses to know that your face is you. We use it to know what type of trees are there and how much carbon these trees are capturing. So we build these predictive models that can tell with a big degree of precision how much carbon is that forest capturing. So in doing so, we're reducing the cost of validating a project, and we're increasing the visibility. So when we go to Microsoft and to these companies, they can see the impact that their money is going to make. And that the thesis is that will increase their chances of them actually supporting this type of projects. And we're making everything on an online platform that is not that different than, you know, we like to say that we want to be like the Airbnb of the forest, right? It should be as easy as it is to rent an apartment on Airbnb to support a reforestation project in the Amazon, right? So we're building a website that is very user-friendly, that harnesses all these satellite images to bring visibility, and that then can channel this funding, this money from these corporations to these reforestation projects effectively. So what we do, we are a small team of mostly software engineers, forest scientists, product designers that are working on building this technology stack that can help make that vision happen. And then we go and we partner with these different forest projects around the world. And then we go and we present this to different companies, starting here with technology companies in Silicon Valley, but hopefully at some point reaching out to all big corporations that want to take responsibility in front of climate change.
Thank you so much. That actually was such a clear answer. I really appreciate that. So for you then, as the founder of Pachama, how do you spend your days, given all of those different moving parts that are going on?
Yeah.
Are you doing software design? Are you doing web development? Are you doing marketing? Are you doing fundraising? What do you find yourself doing?
Yes, I don't know, but I wake up very early in the morning and go to sleep very late, unfortunately, lately. Yeah. That's not good. You should, you know, one as a founder and as a person should be very balanced on their lifestyle. But starting a company takes a lot of work at the beginning. It's like pushing a car that, you know, the starting engine doesn't work, so you need to really push it and then starts to run. But to your question, so we are two co-founders. My co-founder, Tomas, he is an engineer. He's a machine learning engineer. So he's a CTO and I am the CEO. That's a typical, structure on startups. You have a technical founder who is more on the engineering side, and he will be building the product, building the software, and managing the team that is building. And then another founder that is more business or storytelling and more of a recruiter, right? So the way that we split our responsibilities is I am the guy who is raising capital from investors, talking to customers, talking to forest owners, talking to candidates to bring candidates to the team, and communicating the vision, communicating the story of the company over and over to rally the resources so that this company can exist. And then Tomas is more down, heads down into the building of the software and building of all the technology. Of course, we talk a lot to be in the same page. We came up together with a vision for the company, and because I like technology and I like product and I like design, I like to get involved as well. So it's not that I'm completely separated from that. I would say that I generally have we have one weekly engineering meeting, one weekly product meeting, one weekly science meeting, and in that, those are the meetings in which I get involved. I give my opinions, and I make sure that we are building what we're saying that we're building. But most of my time, to be honest, is really on communicating the vision, building the team, and securing the resources, and bringing customers, making sure that the customers are happy, making sure that the project is moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So I love that you're talking about the idea of storytelling and selling the vision. One thing I was thinking about, the cynical part of me wonders how Silicon Valley has reacted to Pachama, and what some might suggest is, a little bit more of an idealistic vision of a company, or an idealistic mission of a company. And so I'm wondering, when you tell your story in Silicon Valley, how do you tell it? And are you getting a good reaction?
Yeah, so we raised capital from the founder of Uber, from the co-founder of Uber, and then from the first investors on Airbnb, the first investors on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook.
So you're getting a good reaction.
Yeah. I have to say that we managed to convince them that we can be as big as Uber or Airbnb or Instagram, right? And I put a lot of thought on the design of this company on, okay, the purpose is to restore the forest to solve climate change, right? That's the mission. Now, how do we come up with a business model that we make money in doing so, right? Because if we come up with a business model in which we make money in doing so, then it's a win-win. We're going to be able to raise capital from investors that want to invest in companies that make money, and we're going to achieve the mission. And one of the theses that I have for the 21st century is that business has to be at the service of making the planet a better place. So we have to put a lot of entrepreneurs, we have to put a lot of thinking on coming up with business models that are aligned with that, right? So that making the world a better place is not something that is, something that we do with the profits that we make from this other business model that destroys the planet, right? Or that makes the planet a worse place, right? No, the business model has to be supportive of this purpose, aligned with a life-sustaining civilization, right? So in our case, we make money. So every time, as I was telling you, we connect companies such as Microsoft with a project in the Amazon. We validate the work with satellite images, and we take a commission out of this transaction, right? Mm-hmm. So the more money that we manage to bring to reforestation projects, the more forests get protected, the more money we make, right? And in that sense, it's not different than Airbnb or Uber, right? We're a marketplace. We're an online marketplace that take commissions and is growing the demand, growing the supply. So I went with that pitch to Silicon Valley investors, and they love it. They were like, yes, I mean, you have to paint a vision of, okay, under what scenario is this going to be a giant company, right? And what I painted is this: humanity is going to face the reality, like it or not, that we need to deal with climate change. There is already 440 particles per thousand of CO2 in the atmosphere. We are starting to see fires in California, fires in the Amazon rainforest, natural disasters all around that are a result of climate change, right? So even if we keep electing insane politicians that don't believe in climate change, people will demand corporations to act. And if that is the case, then there's going to be a need for a platform that can channel that capital to these projects, right? And that's the scenario that we're working towards, right? Now, we might also believe that there's another scenario in which people continue not believing in climate change, don't do anything about it, and okay, that's not the world I want to live in, right? So that was the pitch, and yeah, I guess it resonated. So my thesis also is this: people want anybody, Donald Trump, Bolsonaro, they want a planet for the children and the grandchildren, right? So they might know about science, they might not know about science. Everybody wants to do the right thing. So we just need to build the tools for people to make it easy to do the right thing. So that was a little bit the pitch.
I love that. And I'm struck by how clear you are on that vision right now. You had mentioned that you took some time off, you took a sabbatical after Blue Smart, or was it after the Hostel app?
Blue Smart, after
Blue Smart. Okay. So Blue Smart, you went and you took a sabbatical and you did some reflection and figured out, the kind of impact you wanted to make in the world. And I'm wondering if the vision that you have now, technology aside, could you have had this vision yourself when you were, let's say, 20? Or do you feel like you kind of had to grow up a little bit in order to come to where you are? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I was thinking about it this week, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
I was thinking about it because in this company, everything is going easier than in my previous companies. And I feel that one of the reasons why it's going easier is because everybody wants to help us. Investors, the press, everybody. I'm attracting incredible talent, people from Google, from Apple, from NASA, from the best companies that want to work for this mission. So I was like, why didn't I start companies like this before, right? And there was a part of me, I reflected, that felt when I finished college, when I was very young, that I hadn't earned my right to build a company like this. And I was like, well, no, I have to start with something less ambitious, a mobile app, just a mobile app but now I think back and no, I could have started this company. Yes, I did a lot of mistakes in the first company and I'm a better entrepreneur now because I learned from these mistakes. The best way to learn is just to go out and make mistakes. But I do think that anybody can, no matter how young you are, you can start a company with an ambitious vision and with a big purpose. And yeah, I tell you, it's easier. It's easier actually. Even if it may sound harder, it's actually easier.
Because it's something that people can really buy into, like get passionate about and be inspired by. Yes.
I mean, engineers in Silicon Valley don't want to work for another photo sharing app. Okay, there are already photo sharing apps, right? Yeah. But if you say like, look, let's go solve climate change. Yes, it's a very difficult mission, but we can do it. And you're going to attract amazing people,
Yeah. We're starting to get questions on chat, so that's awesome. I do want to ask one more question and then open it up. So if you're out there and you've got a question, write it down, put it in chat, or just get ready to ask it in a minute. Diego, I do want to ask you about Y Combinator, which I think you've gone through twice now. Yeah. And I'm wondering, so for those of you who don't know, Y Combinator is a very famous, big name startup accelerator in Silicon Valley. So I wondered for you, how was Y Combinator helpful? And would you recommend that everybody who has an idea try to go through an incubator or an accelerator?
Yes. I did Y Combinator twice. Y Combinator is game changing. I will tell you how. There are other accelerators as well that are good as well. Going through an accelerator helps, but it doesn't secure success. And you can build a company without the help of an accelerator for sure. In fact, the very attitude of a founder has to be that you're going to do it regardless. With investors, without investors, with accelerators, without accelerators, you're going to do it, right? You have to have that level of determination. And then, yes, look for different resources that can help you out. With my first company, I was in New York City. I was having a really hard time raising capital because the things I told you, it was in the midst of a crisis. I didn't speak English well. And so, yeah, reasonably, nobody would give me money. And I learned about this accelerator in Chile called Startup Chile that would give you $40,000. You had to fill, a form with an idea, and but you had to move to Chile for 6 months. And I did it, and I applied, I got selected, and I moved to Chile, and I'm just telling that to say that sometimes you have to be willing to do whatever it takes to get your company started, to fund your company. Now, Y Combinator and all other accelerators, what they are good at is, first, they surround you with a network of mentors that can give you advice and help you avoid mistakes that you may make otherwise. It also puts you in batches with other founders that are at similar stages. So starting a company can be very lonely at the beginning. Unlike working for a company, or unlike being a student at university in which you have a lot of peers, when you're starting a company, you're on your own, right? So having other founders that are in the same stage is also super cool. Now you can manufacture that yourself. You could become friends with other founders and say, hey, let's help each other out. It's good to have friends to ask questions. Hey, how are you doing this? So it's a lot of knowledge sharing that is super useful. And then finally, Y Combinator in particular, they put you in front of the best investors in Silicon Valley at the end of the accelerator. And that just makes it a lot easier to raise capital. Yeah.
Cool. One of the students in our group has asked, what are some mistakes that you wish you could have avoided?
Yes, we need 4 hours.
Couple beers.
Right. Let's see. The first thing that comes to my mind is it's super easy at the beginning to get distracted by things that seem to add value, but actually doesn't add value. And these are things that you see other entrepreneurs, other startups doing, and you're copying. Well, if they're doing this, maybe that's what I should be doing. And they're actually not what add value. And examples of that are, for example, trying to win an award, right? Trying to win an award, and then you spend a lot of time working on the award application, and you win the award and nothing changes, Another example could be going to conferences. You want to go to all the conferences because I had to go and learn and network, and no, that doesn't add value at the beginning. PR, being on the press at the beginning. People, founders want to be in the press because that feels like validation, right? And at the end of the day, at the beginning, the only thing you need to do is to validate that you are making something of value for someone. And to do that, you need to do two things: build that something and show it to people that are the potential users or customers of that thing. That's the only two things that you need to make, right? And that's why having two founders, by the way, one that builds and the other that sells, is good, because you can do two things in parallel. But these are the things that matter the most. And it's super easy at the beginning to get distracted. I did it myself. I was going to conferences, trying to apply for awards, and all sort of distractions that feel like adding value and they don't add value. I guess another mistake is focusing on the wrong metrics. Again, thinking that what matters is how many employees you have, how many visits to the websites you have, and that might not be what matters, right? What matters is, are you solving a problem to someone? Are you creating something that is of value to someone? I think another mistake was not listening to advice and feedback. You had to this is a tricky one because as an entrepreneur, you had to be incredibly self-confident. You had to be insane enough to believe that you can create something out of nowhere. And at the same time, you had to be very humble and listen to people. If people tells you, here, there's a problem in your idea, it's very easy to get defensive and like, oh, you're not understanding my idea, you know? No, you had to listen. You had to, okay, especially negative feedback, you had to take it. Let me think about it. And then you reflect and then you say, okay, how can I make the idea better to address that feedback, right? That feedback is super valuable. It's super easy to get offended. You know, the ego is the biggest enemy of young entrepreneurs, right? Because it's a double-edged sword. You need self-confidence, but the ego can blind you to your blind spots. As I was saying, working too hard, again, you have to work hard. There's no other way around. But you also have to find ways to calm down. Again, I meditate every day. That's something I learned in my sabbatical. I learned to meditate. I did a meditation retreat in which Buddhist monks teach me to meditate. And now I meditate every single day. It's like taking a shower. To me, is taking a meditation session. And without it, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be running the company as effective as I am. So meditation is a huge one. Physical activity, being able to just, do some form of physical activity, eating healthy, these kind of things, taking care of your body and your mind, super, super important. I didn't do that in my two first companies, and it was a problem.
Yeah. Diego, can I ask, a minute ago you were talking about ego, and Maggie has asked about who you look for when you try to find a partner. And I'm wondering, not just in terms of maybe a co-founder, but in terms of putting your team together, do you look for people who are going to help kind of check your ego if you need it checked? How do you think about putting a team together?
For sure. I mean, first and foremost, you need to look for people who are complementary skills and same values and similar vision of what you're trying to build, right? Ideally, before partnering, before saying, hey, let's build a company together, before getting married, you want to date, right? So the ideal situations before starting a company, maybe start a project, maybe start up, let's start playing around with a project, start getting together to build something. And only after you have really gotten to know each other, then you say, okay, let's build a company together. Values and vision, these are the things that have to be in common, because these are the things that if you have disagreements there, then it's not going to work out. And yes, then you need people who are going to tell you the truth, who are going to, but that's also on the founder to create an environment of genuine communication so that people can tell you the truth. You have to look for the smartest people that you can find. Intelligence is, of course, important, but again, not ever without values. Values, integrity, and motivated by the right reasons, right? You have to look for people who actually want to build on this mission and not get rich or not, get famous. These kind of things are red flags, right? And then where to look for your founders, for your co-founders, I think is on your friends, on your colleagues, on your network. Generally, your co-founders will be on your network. And that's why I also think that expanding your network, especially when you're a student and being very active and participating on different forums, is a great way to have then a network that you can tap into.
Thanks. One question I had, it's kind of inspired a little bit from a question Colin just asked, which is, how is COVID-19 changing the landscape for Pachama? As I've been reading about how the US is now rolling back some environmental regulations, probably not for the better. And so I'm wondering, is Pachama stepping up in any way, or is the landscape for you changing?
Yes, for sure. Nobody knows how this is going to play out, but we could be in front of the worst economic recession in recent decades, right? This could be something like the Great Depression. We don't know. That is challenging and at the same time full of opportunities. In our market in particular, I can go into our market in particular, but I'd rather go generic. I think that I personally see this crisis as I heard an economist saying we were already in crisis, guys. The system that we were running was not sustainable. We were going to crash. So this crash is an opportunity to redesign a new system, right? The way that we were doing everything in the economy was not sustainable, right? So this is actually an amazing opportunity to start thinking, okay, on the post-COVID world, what are the type of companies that we need to build this new economy, and an economy that is more aligned with nature and the environment, more aligned with people and their needs, and with systems that are more resilient, right? If coronavirus is showing us something, is that we didn't have resilient systems. So I think this time is full of opportunities for starting companies. I think it's a lot easier to be an early stage company like we are, that we are going from 0 to 1, than to be a company that's already in 100 and needs to go from 100 to 150, right? So, we are in a very fortunate position. We raise capital. We have capital to continue investing for some time. And we just secured some additional capital, actually. And so in our case, yes, the market is going to be affected, but we're building this for a very long term. So we're going to continue being very nimble, investing on the technology and on the building blocks of what we're trying to construct, and betting on that the companies like Pachama are going to be the companies that will win in this new economy. And I think that, if you look at the, Airbnb and Uber were started in the 2008, 2009 crisis. Google and Amazon were started in the 2001 crisis after the dot-com crash. Generally, the best companies emerge on times of crisis.
Huh. I had no idea about that. That is very interesting.
Yeah.
Diego, I'm aware of the time, and I know that you have to jump on another phone call right now.
Yes.
Yeah, so I realize we're cutting it short, but, and I do apologize for that, but I also, of course, want to respect your time. If students would like to hear more from you, or maybe get in touch with you, what's your advice for that?
You can follow me on Twitter, Saez-Gil on Twitter. My email is d@pachama. You can email me. I receive a bunch of emails. I'll try to respond to everyone, but I might be slow on responding to emails. And yeah, my email and Twitter.
Okay, great. And I, of course, want to keep talking with you at some point. So if you don't mind, we will have you back virtually or in person. And we'll let everybody here know too if we get another chance to talk with you.
For sure. It's a pleasure. Thank you all, guys. I hope.
Thank you, Diego.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend. And thanks for joining us. If anybody has questions for me, again, I am Rebecca Gill in communication. That's Gill RE at Wake if you wanted to touch base about anything. Thank you so much for being here. And hopefully you found something exciting there. I know I did. Okay.